This is Desiree Delahant, and this is my EDL 850 Module 12 Tort Liability presentation. Tort is an actionable or civil wrong committed against one person by another, and that was from the text by Essex. Students injured by school personnel can claim monetary damages for intentional and unintentional torts, and that will be explained more fully on the next slide. And they can also claim charges for damages to reputation that are done by teachers or schools. Teachers can be held liable for damages to students while they are under their supervision. Intentional torts can include assault, battery, libel, slander, defamation, invasion of privacy, false arrest. False arrest means if they are locked somewhere or put into a room with no escape. And malicious prosecution. These do require proof of intent or willfulness. Unintentional tort could be one of the actions listed to the left, which happens because a teacher, staff member, or administrator is being negligent, and they are not intending to be malicious, and they do not require proof or intent of willfulness. However, in both cases, charges can be pressed on either the individual or school if they are found liable. The first case I found was Johnson Johnson versus School District of Millard. And it happened September 15th, 1993. Robbie Johnson, a first grader at Willacard Cather Elementary School, was in a music class, and the teacher was teaching them how to play London Bridges. Robbie was put in the middle, and he was being swung back and forth. He told his classmates to stop a few times. Well, they swung him too hard, and he flew out and hit his head. It required 50 stitches to close the wound. He had headaches and temporary blindness. The court ruled in favor of Johnson. They claimed negligence of supervision. The children in this case did say that the teacher had her back to them because she was helping another student. It also said that she had her back to them because she was writing on a whiteboard. So the teacher and the students, the way they explained it did not match. And Johnson was awarded $21,266.10 in damages. In evaluating the case, I think that if it happened in my school, I would have a safety talk. I would discuss the safety with students. I want to make sure they understand if someone's telling them to stop, they need to stop. I would also talk to the teachers about the importance of keeping the room, circulating around the room, and make sure that the students are in her line of vision. I know that's not possible at all times because especially in music class, if you're moving around, the kids can be moving around too and might end up behind you. Some proactive measures. So one tort prevention would be, I don't want to keep the game from being played, but I would suggest that if she knows that day she's going to be playing a game like that, where kids are in contact with one another, that there would be another adult supervising the game. That way she can have help monitoring the students, and she would also have a witness in case something did happen. How would I set professional ethics, a set of professional ethics for help? I think that nothing unethical occurred, but they claim that the teacher had her back to the group. So I would make sure that in the ethical policy, I would remind that children have to be supervised at all time, and especially in an activity, like I said, that has contact, where students are touching one another. The next case is Barrett versus USD 259. It happened August 17th of 1998. And the student involved is Robert Alexander Barrett, and he was a 12th grade student at Southeast High School in Wichita, so that was here in Kansas. They had a football practice that started at 8 a.m. with multiple drink and rest breaks, and at the time that the practice started, it was already 83 degrees outside, and this practice, in the case, it explained that when it went on past 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so obviously the temperatures rose. Robert did collapse on the field at the end of practice, and the next day he died in the hospital. So the result of the case is that the defendant did owe a general duty of care. Liability for ordinary negligence of defendant was eliminated. The plaintiff cannot recover a claim of ordinary negligence, but they can pursue a claim of gross and wanton negligence. So they didn't win the first case, but they said that she could go on to pursue a gross and wanton negligence claim. If it happened in my school, I think that it would be important to have a sports safety talk, and that would be talking to the players about bodily awareness, making sure that if they're feeling ill, that they notify somebody immediately. In this case, he did tell them he was feeling sick, but went on to practice. I would make sure that the coaches watch for signs of overexposure as well, and dehydration, because that's something that can happen when they're out there in the sun all day, and that is it is important that the coaches pay attention to their kids that are in their care at that time. Proactive measures to prevent tort. I would limit the practice time. This practice was a really long time. It said that it ended after 1 and it was 5 hours. There should be practice time cap. Rest and drink breaks should be required more frequently. And I think there should be some sort of temperature guideline, so that it's not getting too hot and these kids aren't getting some heat exposure. A set of professional ethics would help. If there was a policy about coaches considering how they would be affected by the similar circumstances, they need to consider the conditions that are harmful and when they need to stop, when it becomes too dangerous. The next case is the Mosley versus Portland Public School District 1J, and it happened November 13th, 1987, and it was a Cressida Mosley. She was a 15-year-old student, and she got into a fight during lunch with another student and was stabbed with a box cutter knife in her face and her chest. There was no security personnel in the hallway at the time of the altercation. However, there was security personnel in the building. The case results, the circuit court found for the school district, but then the Oregon Court of Appeals reversed the ruling. So it went on to Oregon Supreme Court, and they did affirm the circuit court's decision. They said that there was insufficient evidence that the district was negligent to break up the fight, and that's what they were claiming when they took the school district to court. So if it happened in my school, I think I would bring in an SRO to talk to the students about consequences of bringing a weapon to school and fighting. Fighting on school property is punishable by expulsion, and it should not be tolerated. Some proactive measures. If there were security persons available, they would be required to be spread out through the hallways in any areas where where students are present at that time. They should be outside, and teachers, not security guards, but teachers should be outside during every transition period supervising as well. And that is something we do in my building now. And then a set of professional ethics. I think that it is the job of the teacher to make sure students are supervised at all time. I would put into policy that students should be watched when entering and leaving class, as well as when they are in the halls, so that they can prevent this type of tort liability. I know in my building, my students are not allowed to leave the classroom until I step in front of them out into the hall and watch the hallway. NM versus Anchorage School District was my next case. This one was a little sad. Well, obviously they're all a little sad. This one was just really sad because I have a little boy. So MN, and it didn't have a name, is a 6-year-old boy, and he goes to Roger Park Elementary School. He tripped over stumps and saplings on school property. A stick penetrated his eye socket and frontal lobe of his brain, and it did cause him to go into a coma and wake up with permanent damage. They filed negligence of school district and for having dangerous school grounds for small children. The case results, it ended up going to Supreme Court, and it did find that the school was negligent, that the district should have taken better care of their properties, because this little boy was running and tripped over this sapling on the stump on sapling on the ground. The district ended up being liable for $4.5 million in damages to this child. Additional money for emotional distress was also given to these parents. This was kind of a scary case for me to read. What if it happened in my school? I think administration would need to be notified immediately. I would talk to all the students about being safe and aware of their surroundings. And these are obviously little kids. This little boy was only 6. I would request the superintendent come and inspect the school grounds and ask the maintenance, be sure they're checking for possible hazards as well. Some proactive measures, I think it would be a good idea to do some ground checks frequently, just to make sure there is nothing that kids could be hurt on, like this caused a falling and tripping hazard. I think work orders should be put in for anything that could cause harm to students on school property. And then as for the set of professional ethics, staff should be aware that if they spot anything that can be dangerous to students, they need to report it. The district is responsible to remove the dangers, but teachers need to make sure they're reporting it if they see something like this. An example, at my school, we had a back parking lot that would flood, and then when it was cold, it would freeze. So we had a lot of teachers falling, and if students are walking through that back parking lot, they would fall too. The next case is Evans versus Oak Mission Public School, and this is about a child named Raymond Evans, and he's a junior in high school. He had been previously injured at school and told not to participate in contact sports, and so he did stop, and I believe it was in his freshman year. He went on to not do any contact sports his sophomore year, and then his junior year, he was enrolled in a non-physical education class. Well, he decided to enroll in a PE class, even though the doctor told him not to, and he did have parental permission. In December, in this class, he was wrestling and dislocated his shoulder. So the lawsuit brought a claim of negligence and gross negligence to the school district. In the results, the claims against the teacher and coaches were dismissed with prejudice. The school sought summary judgment that it was immune for liability, and the court found that summary judgment was proper, and it ruled with the school. And they actually did have a written permission from this parent that they allowed him to be in this class, this PE class, even though they knew there were contact sports played every Friday in this class. So what if it happened in my school? I would make sure that I met with parents, and I would also make sure that students are aware that they cannot participate in these contact sports without doctor permission, especially if they had a big injury before. Restrictions, that would be my proactive measurement. I would put in place a policy that restricts the participation of students in PE classes if they have previous injury, and they have to have proof from their doctor that they are fit to participate. And then a set of professional ethics judgment. I think that staff should follow policies for students. We have guidelines in place to keep students from harm, but they should use their best judgment for participation to prevent injury. So in this case, they knew this child had a hurt shoulder. They should have probably told him no. Staff should also notify parents and administrators of this decision. So if they decide that the student cannot perform that day, they should go over, talk to their administrator first, and then give these parents a call and make sure they understand why they're not allowing that child to participate that day. And here is my source. Thank you very much for watching.